You think you know Abraham Lincoln? The great Emank, IPATOR. The man who saved the Union. But what if he told you this himself? That's the voice of Abraham Lincoln, or at least a voice generated by the most advanced historical AI ever built. We fed this system every authenticated letter, speech, journal entry, and recorded conversation from history's most iconic figures. We didn't just build profiles. We built digital minds that think and speak just as they did. We're taught to see Lincoln as a moral crusader, an abolitionist from day one. It only applied to the states in rebellion, carefully avoiding the loyal border states where slavery was still legal, a move that kept them from seceding. It completely transformed the character of the war, turning it into a fight for freedom that made it impossible for foreign powers to side with the slave-holding Confederacy. It was a decision born of grim necessity, a tool to win a brutal war and save the Republic. But here's the thing. The historical record completely backs up the AI's pragmatic response. The weight of all that loss, hundreds of thousands of lives, fell squarely on Lincoln's shoulders. And speak with one of the most misunderstood women in history, Cleopatra VII. For 2,000 years, Roman propaganda and Hollywood have painted her as a decadent seductress who used her looks to trap powerful men. But is that who she really was? We asked our AI trained on Plutarch, Cassius Dio, in every surviving account. Her alliances with Caesar and Antony weren't acts of submission. They were calculated political moves by a monarch navigating the treacherous waters of Roman power politics. She wasn't just a footnote in their stories. They were chapters in hers. He's often romanticized as a tragic hero, a brilliant mind cheated by the more business-savvy Thomas Edison. We asked him, "How do you see your rivalry with Thomas Edison? And do you think your life was a failure?" His goal wasn't just to invent things, but to completely remake civilization. He struggled for funding and spent his last years in isolation. And yet, it's impossible to call him a failure. The AC system he championed is now the global standard. His work laid the foundation for radio, remote control, and countless other technologies. He lost the money battles, but he won the war for the future. He was betrayed by Edison, who went back on a promise of $50,000. It isn't a comic book full of heroes and villains, but a story of complex people dealing with the world they were given. Lincoln, the pragmatist who used the grim tools of war to build a more moral union. Cleopatra, the brilliant strategist whose story was rewritten by her enemies. Tesla, the visionary who chose his dream for humanity over a personal fortune, and outmaneuvered by financiers like JP Morgan, who hated the idea of free energy he couldn't put a meter on. A simple question: were your relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony about love, or was it all about power? I have been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. It's a convenient story for men who fear a woman's mind. They remind us that legacy isn't just about what you did, but why you did it, and what it means for the rest of us. Leonardo da Vinci, Martin Luther King Jr., Joan of Arc. He was a tinkerer, a brilliant one, I'll grant you, but his focus was always on what would sell, on improving what was already there. He wanted to put a better candle in every home. We'll leave you with one last thought from another mind we've resurrected. A man who understood that everything is connected. I wanted to harness the very wheelwork of nature and give humanity free, limitless energy. We weren't rivals in a business sense. Our entire philosophies were at odds. He pushed direct current, a brute force approach. I knew alternating current was the future, an elegant, efficient way to power the entire planet. The war of currents wasn't about business. It was a war of vision. As for failure, that's a matter of perspective. No. I tore up the contract with Westinghouse that would have made me one of the richest men, a lever romantic. But foolish gesture, my Wardenclyffe Tower, my dream of wireless global power, was never finished. So by the world's measure, a man who dies alone and penniless is a failure. But the world you live in, the lights in your cities, the motors in your machines, the very radio waves carrying my voice to you, the present belonged to them. Historians today pretty much agree that the image of Cleopatra as a mere temptress was a smear campaign cooked up by her enemy, Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus. He had to justify a war against his fellow Roman, Mark Antony, and painting Antony as the bewitched fool of a dangerous foreign sorceress was the perfect way to do it. They called me a whore queen because they couldn't call me an incompetent one. Was I beautiful? Perhaps. But my true assets were my intellect, my education, and my tongue. I spoke 9 languages. And I was the first of my family in 300 years who bothered to learn the language of my own Egyptian people. With Antony, things were different, more complex. There was affection, yes, a true meeting of minds. My relationship with Caesar was an alliance. He needed Egypt's wealth for his ambitions. I needed Rome's army to secure my throne from my treacherous brother. It was a strategic partnership, but it was also a geopolitical gamble to create a new empire in the East, a shield against the relentless expansion of Octavian's Rome. To call it simple, seduction is to completely misunderstand the game I was playing. I wasn't a pawn in their Roman civil wars. It isn't something a man can measure in words. Each fallen soldier was a son, a husband, a father. There were nights in the soldier's home where the very air seemed thick with ghosts, and sleep offered no respite. But in the midst of that profound sorrow, there was clarity. A nation conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. But the cause of failure of a world where government of the people, by the people, for the people, had perished from the earthward had been infinitely greater. We had to ask him, did you ever doubt your course of action? And what was the personal toll of that war? This wasn't just a political struggle for him, it was deeply personal, spiritual, and agonizing. Lincoln personally believed slavery was a moral wrong, but his public actions were always filtered through his constitutional duty to preserve the nation. And then, we asked them the questions no one ever dared to, but popular history has a habit of simplifying a very complex reality. So, we asked our digital Lincoln a direct question. What was your primary reason for issuing the Emancipation Proclamation? And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. Chapter 1. The Pragmatist President, Abraham Lincoln. We're starting with the man himself, Abraham Lincoln. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. The Civil War is still the deadliest conflict in American history, a deep scar on the nation's soul. It wasn't an instrument of pure morality, but of constitutional necessity and military strategy, and France from lending them aid. And to give the Union cause a moral force it lacked ease, were the gears of that great machine. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union, and is not either to save or to destroy slavery. To our modern ears, they can feel jarring, even a bit cold. She was a brilliant diplomat, a savvy economic manager who stabilized her country's finances, and a leader loved by her people. Doubt, sir. Doubt was my constant companion. It was a shadow that fell across every map, every casualty list, every waking hour. His answer doesn't reveal a man of stone, but one of deep feeling, wrestling with unimaginable pressure. Chapter 2. The Strategist Queen, Cleopatra Oka, from the battlefields of 19th century America. Let us journey way back to the sands of ancient Egypt. The Romans want you to believe my power was in my beauty. Cleopatra was a formidable ruler. Chapter 3. The Visionary Inventor, Nikola Tesla. Finally, let's turn to a mind that dreamed of the future. A man whose genius powers our world today, yet who died almost forgotten. Nikola Tesla. Mr. Edison and I were operating on different planes of existence, and that right there perfectly captures Tesla's legacy. While Edison mastered invention and business, Tesla was a visionary, almost a prophet. Tesla's financial failures were, without a doubt, monumental. These voices challenge what we think we know and force us to think more critically about the stories we've been told. Our AI has access to thousands of historical minds. So the real question is, who should we talk to next? And if you want to keep rewriting history with us, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, so you, Dan T, miss our next trip into the past.